MEP, Honorable Mamela. Just some housekeeping. This workshop, this session is lively broadcast on national television, so please stay awake and don't eat chocolates. Yes, yes. Just a friendly warning for that. In the words of the former Auditor-General, Teres Nombembe, he said, our responsibility extends to citizens who trust us to make a contribution towards a better South Africa. I think that is also the purpose this afternoon. In your role, in our role as members of Parliament, regarding our work in our committees, dealing with annual and quarterly reports, but also in terms of the Auditor-General's responsibility to tell us what is going on in departments, the mirror. How does we look in terms of the administration? Honourable members, there won't be a formal tea break. You can fetch your cup of tea, coffee outside and bring it to your table, because there's meetings running after this workshop in terms of legislation that honourable members also have to attend up till about 9 o'clock tonight. I've noted, Honourable Magoro.
Yes, Chair. You have just mentioned it in passant that we've got to keep awake, and I'm sure all of us agree with you. But could you, in the meantime, ask for fresh air for us? It's very hot here.
There's a friendly request. The Honourable Magoro is a farmer. He's used to fresh air. And myself, coming from the Northern Cape, clean fresh air. So that could the staff please assist in that matter? Honourable members, I will now call on the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Honourable T.C. Mamela, to do the opening and welcome. Honourable Mamela.
Honorable Ranto, I heard what you said and I accepted. I'll decipher that later. No instructions to me. Yeah, I'm so short. Can I stand up? House chairpersons for the corporate governance and intergovernmental relations in the NCOP, chairpersons and whippery, delegates from the provinces, and representatives of organized local government, Auditor-General, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, Dumelang, Sanbonani. Let me start by conveying an apology on behalf of Chairperson of National Council of Provinces, Honorable Mahlangu, who could not attend due to other competing parliamentary business. He's, however, happy that we have been able to have this interaction following the tabling of the national and provincial audit outcomes in November last year, which were released in terms of the Public Finance Management Act. I would like to extend a word of appreciation to Honorable Magadla, the House Chairperson for Cooperative Governance and IGR, for ensuring that we have a dynamic relationship with the Office of the Auditor-General to the extent that we now have these regular engagements as part of our business. Equally, I would like to thank the former and current Auditor-General for this important interaction. We hope that you'll continue to derive increased value from these workshops. The workshop is important in the sense that while it provides us with the necessary information to use as the overseers of government, it is also a fulfillment of the responsibility that is stated in the Constitution. Constitution obligates the Auditor-General to deal with audit and report on the accounts, financial statements, and financial management of national and provincial state departments and administrations, all municipalities, any other institution or accounting entity required by national or provincial legislation to be audited by the AG. To a legislative and oversight institution as the NCOP, the audit reports of the Auditor-General are extremely helpful. This is especially so given that they also provide commentary on the effectiveness of key management processes and give feedback on compliance with laws and regulations. Indeed, there will be no point in crafting laws and regulations which we have no intention to adhere to. So we need to know whether there is compliance or not with the instruments that are there to inform the delivery of service. If there's no compliance, we should be concerned as legislators. Generally, the reports of the AG provide us with a clear picture of how government departments and entities account for the utilization of public resources that are placed at their disposal. It is indeed the intention of our Constitution to subject those who are entrusted with the public resources, and in this case, financial resources, to account for their utilization. The Constitution states as one of its principles when it comes to the management of public resources that the efficient, economic, and effective use of resources must be promoted. This workshop serves as one of the means through which we seek to promote this constitutional principle. We note that a sense of optimism, the comment of the former AG, Mr. Terence Nombembe, at the time of releasing the report last year, that there has been a slight but welcome improvement in 2012, 13 audit outcomes of national and provincial departments, as well as public entities. It is encouraging to hear that there are some flickers of hope, but we need to do more and build on the small gains we are beginning to see. We should not regress. With these few words, I would like to open the NCOP and Auditor-General workshop on PFMA and Provincial Audit, national and outcomes of 2012-13, and to also welcome you. Thank you for coming. I'm looking forward to an engaging session on the report and observations of you, AG. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Mamela, for those welcome words. We recognize the following provinces: Eastern Cape, Free State, Gauteng, and KZN, being represented by chairpersons of finance, or other SCOPA, or other COCTA, Chair of Chairs, and then from the Northern Cape, Gauteng, Limpopo, Northwest Mpumalanga, and Eastern Cape officials from those departments of the National Treasury or Director-General or Acting Director-General. So to those people from the provinces, welcome. We are the extension of the provincial legislators, the NCOP. We have a provincial mandate, and this interaction with the provinces is very crucial. Also next week, when the Minister of Finance will table the national budget, these chairpersons will be invited again to be forming part of the briefing session when the Minister takes us through the budget on Thursday, the 27th of February. I just wanted to mention that. Honorable Magatla will sketch the purpose of the workshop. Honorable Magatla, Deputy Chairperson regarding intergovernmental relations in the NCOP, a very, very important unit the Honorable Magatla is chairing.
Thank you, Chairperson, Honorable De Beer. Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Honorable Mamela, Honorable Chairs from various provinces present here today, Acting Chief Whip, Honorable Roto, Honorable Permanent and Special Delegates of the NCOP, the Auditor-General, Mr. K. Magwedu, and your office, NCOP Secretary, Mr. Pindela, and Mr. Makasi. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We welcome the opportunity to host this workshop as the NCOP in order to allow the newly appointed Auditor-General, Mr. Thembekile Magwedu, to brief Parliament and members of the provincial legislatures on national and provincial audit outcomes of the year 2012 and 2013. Welcome, AG. This is your home, NCOP. Though you are not new in your work, but we also welcome you in your new position. You will recall that a general report on these audit outcomes was released last year in November by the Auditor-General, as the Deputy Chairperson has stated, and because of the hectic program of Parliament, then we could not convene a workshop at that time, hence we are meeting today. Honorable members, in line with the legislative and constitutional principles of cooperative government and intergovernmental relations, the main objective of this workshop is to promote a coordinated cooperative approach between NCOP and provincial legislatures on matters related to financial management, good governance, service delivery, and accountability in national and provincial departments. In the same principle, it is important to mention that when the audit outcomes of any departments and public entities get improved, this responds to the call of President Zuma to continue working hard to improve the quality of lives of the people. As Parliament, we have a constitutional responsibility to ensure that government comply with the approved public spending in pursuit of improved service delivery for the achievement of a better quality of life for all. Honorable members, this workshop will indeed provide an opportunity for you to share ideas by debating and discussing the report of the Auditor-General. In so doing, we hope to achieve the following: to assist members to gain insight from the Auditor-General's report about the overall status of financial management in the provincial and national sphere of government and public entities, to use inside information to increase oversight work that will lead to clean governance and administration, to create and strengthen collaboration efforts that will address issues that will be highlighted in the Auditor-General's report, to develop specific action plans to monitor challenges by strengthening basic internal controls of improving the quality of financial and performance reports. Honorable members, these are the key factors that will characterize the purpose of this workshop. And with your wisdom, we hope that the deliberations and recommendations will address the need to effect good governance practices in order to help to improve the audit outcomes. In conclusion, honorable members, we undertake to ensure that this workshop becomes counted amongst the milestones achieved by the Fourth Parliament in strengthening oversight through improving the audit outcomes. I thank Chairperson. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Magatla. Mr. Makwetu, the newly appointed Auditor-General, we wish you well in this position you are occupying. A very important position, because you are also giving direction in terms of the financial management and administration of our national, provincial departments and also local government. But that we are in a partnership, and that is the way forward for us with you as a new appointed AG. I will now call on the Honourable Mamela to welcome and introduce the Auditor-General.
I'm too tired of the short one. I'm thrilled that the new Auditor-General, the young man in front of us, uthembekile kimi Makwethu, has been very much part of the strengthening of the interactive relationship between the NCOP and the Office of the Auditor-General as Deputy Auditor-General then. He is in the better position of understanding what needs to be done to further strengthen this interaction and to promote certain innovative ways of taking it forward. Sithembile ke noko. Both Nombembe and Makwethu were striking in their ability to tell us the truth without fear. But of course, with respect, we appreciate your frankness and being able to bring to our attention the nature of issues that are central to taking our country forward. I've personally taken note of your emphasis on the need for political will in fostering accountability measures. Without strong political will and action, our public institutions may lose the necessary traction to improve internal controls and reporting on the management of financial resources. I know that our House Chairperson, Honourable Magatla, is very serious about the issue you have raised with us in the past. As the institution, we're finding ways, including the form of a report, to ensure that these are not lost in our transition to the Fifth Parliament. Nyana wethu Makwethu, we welcome you as the new Auditor General. Siyazi ukuthi ubuya eKasi. Upindela will know what I'm talking to. Uyazi ukuthi sikhuluma ngani? Masikhuluma ngokuphathwa kahle kwezimali zabantu. Siyacela ke usisize ukuze nathi senze umsebenzi wethu ngokweqiniso nokuthembeka. I admire the kind of support you provide to the former Auditor General. I don't recall the two of you disagreeing in public. I do not think it is an expression of your maturity which made you realize that you were there to support the leader and not to compete. As a result, you became a formidable duo that took the battle for transparency in the governance to new levels. I hope that you'll receive similar support from your team during your time of head of the office of the Auditor General. Mr. Makwethu was born in Cape Town, studied social sciences at the University of Cape Town. He received a BCom honors degree from the University of South Africa, UNISA, in 1997, and is a qualified chartered accountant. He served as Deputy Auditor General for 7 years before his appointment as Auditor General. As the NCOP, we welcome your appointment as South Africa's new Auditor General with effect from December 2013. We wish you and your team in the Office of Auditor General of South Africa well. The Office of the Auditor General, one of the institutions supporting democracy, has a critical role to play in our developing democracy. It plays a far more critical role in contributing to the strengthening of our constitutional democracy through promoting accountability, effectiveness, and transparency. Njengomfana waseKasi, you know our shortcomings as Black people. But rest assured, we are very committed to actually reaching the other top levels when it comes to financial accountability. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Mamela, for those welcome words towards the Auditor General. Addressing the National Assembly in October, presenting the MTBBS, the Minister of Finance highlighted and emphasized the following matters: good governance, sound financial management, value for money, and accountability. That is part of the purpose of this workshop today. To listen to the Auditor General taking us through his report and to do an analysis of what have to be done to come up with better, clean reports in the future. AG, over to you. You may address the House. Thank you. Where you are comfortable, you can do your presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable De Beer. And good afternoon to the Deputy Chair of the National Council of Provinces, Mama Umemela. Good afternoon, Mama Makadla, and the rest of the leadership of the National Council of Provinces and Provincial Delegates. It is indeed a great pleasure to be presenting our 2012-2013 PFMA audit outcomes and the outcome of our analysis to this august body. We, as has been indicated earlier on, we have tabled this report in November of 2013 at the tail end of my predecessor, Mr. Terence Nombembe's term. When we presented this report in November, which is what we refer to as the General Report of the Auditor-General for the period 2012-2013, we were aware that the report we were presenting was going to find expression in a number of other places within Parliament. And so we are indeed extremely excited that we have now secured the audience of the National Council of Provinces, because we're dealing with a report that has got a central interest in the work that the National Council of Provinces does. The report, Honorable Chair, that we're going to be sharing with you, as I've indicated, the detail and the narrative of it, the numbers that are associated with the issues that we are raising in this report, are all contained in our general report. And it is my pleasure to also invite members to, from time to time, read that report even between other competing priorities that they might be focusing on, because it contains very rich information about how the work of the National Council of Provinces can be taken to the next level. As an institution, and in the context of the welcome and the words of encouragement from the leadership, we also have given a thought to a number of issues as an institution that we felt will be of interest to you as we embark on this journey of building on what our predecessors have done up to now. And as an institution, we have looked at what is it that we would want to leave as a legacy in the institutions of public administration. And we said to ourselves, as an institution of the Auditor-General, when we look back 30, 40, 50 years since 1994, we would want to associate ourselves with an institution of government in general that is characterized by transparent financial management and reporting systems, among others. We also said to ourselves we will be more than happy those 30, 40, 50 years since 1994, when we look back, to be able to say that as citizens, we are able to recognize that there is financial management and performance reporting in government that is led and managed by public servants with strong technical skills and experience. That another feature that would, for us, characterize growth and development of the capacity to manage finances in the state could also be characterized by an environment where there is regular maintenance of records and performance and accounting records in the system, so that those that have to make decisions following on the implementation of programs do not have a need to second guess or to test the information presented to them. We also aspire to influence an environment where even accounting officers in government in general would take it upon themselves to have proactive, regular engagements with oversight without having to respond to written correspondence requesting them to come to Parliament. We so wish that the work that we do together could translate into all of these proactive and necessary engagements so that financial management and their ability to restore trust in the ability of public institutions to serve the citizens can at least be put at a place where there is no doubt about the credibility and the trustworthiness of the financial information and performance outcomes associated with those monies. So we are looking forward, Honorable Chair, therefore, as an institution to increasingly demonstrate our impact as a credible voice of reason. And we would want to work very closely with the National Council of Provinces, among other things, to demonstrate that public auditors enhance transparency and ensure accountability that helps government improve its performance, that helps government fight corruption, and also helps government to promote public trust and protect the interest of the citizens they serve. And that's what we commit to, Honorable Chair. And we think that the tools of analysis and the information that we are able to provide to you will get you a lot closer to the realization of these objectives. And with those very short words, I thank you very much for the welcome to the office, as well as the team from the Auditor-General. And as I do that conclusion of my initial opening comments, I would like now to focus on the PFMA audit outcomes for 2012-2013 via the slide presentation on the projector. At the very outset, we thought that we will share with you a picture that all of us are familiar with, as it is a picture that reflects the different 9 provinces as we know them in the Republic of South Africa. What's out on there is the outcome of the audit work that we have done for the year 12 and 13 with regards to national department and provinces. We decided that we are not going to put rands and millions of rands on the map, but to put the color scheme that illustrates the type of conclusions that we have reached in the audit work that we have done. As a refresher, the legend associated with any one of those 4 colors or 5 that we use on the presentation are set out on the far right-hand corner of the slide. Earlier on, Honorable Memela reflected on the sentiments of former AG Terence Nombembe when he said at the tabling of this general report that this report reflects an improvement. And I think it is important to register that point and say that what we are looking at in respect of the year 12 and 13, we are looking at audit outcomes that are reflecting an improvement. An improvement on the conclusions that we have reached with regards to the financial statement opinion, as well as on the area of quality of annual performance reports and compliance with legislation. So the overall conclusion that came with this audit was to say there is an improvement. However, this improvement has come on the back of a number of other challenges that simultaneously need to be attended to, which I will deal with in the course of the presentation. I think it is important to make note of the fact that if our understanding of colors, since we have been presenting these audit outcomes, is well entrenched, you will notice that the red color on that map is few and far between if one looks at the provinces, which tells a story about where we have come from in respect of these audit outcomes. And I'm sure each of the provinces, as I illustrate the provincial picture, will make that point very clear. But I think it is worthy to note that the red color, which is associated with the most undesirable audit outcomes of an adverse or a disclaimer of an opinion, is starting to disappear. It is important to take note of that. It has not completely disappeared, but I think it will be important to make note of the fact that it used to be a predominant part of the picture a number of years ago, and that red is starting to disappear. If I look at the audit outcomes just only of the departments, which are departments that are within the administration of the respective provinces, as well as the national provinces on the top left-hand corner next to Namibia there. Also here we are seeing the dominance of yellow when it comes to the departments, whether they are in provinces or they are national departments. There's a dominance of the yellow color code, which reflects a situation that insofar as management of finances as well as reporting accurately on financial statements, a number of these departments in the provinces are starting to get that right. If one looks at each one of the provinces, none of them have got numbers in respect of the yellow that are less than 7. So something that has been worked on over the last couple of years is beginning to show signs of the direction that was defined to translate these outcomes into clean audits by 2014. And I think all of us accept that 2014 will come and go without complete clean audits. However, by the end of 2014, I think it will be easier to say, despite not having achieved all of those clean audits that were aimed for, something else is being achieved, and something else can be built from to still continue to work towards achieving those clean audits. In the next slide, it's a depiction of the movement in respect of what has improved, what has regressed, and the many institutions whose audit opinions have not changed. Let me just stay on this a little longer. When I was talking about the yellow part of the color code, even though those departments have achieved clearance from us in respect of having reported accurately, sitting behind those yellow colors are significant weaknesses in the systems of internal control. I think it is important to make note of that. While we have achieved the accurate reporting on financial statements, it came on the back of major weaknesses in controlling and managing the finances on a day-to-day basis. That fact is illustrated by the number of adjustments that had to be processed during the audit in respect of many of those departments, which means that if the audit was to be signed off 24 hours after the submission of the financial statements, many of those institutions that achieved an unqualified opinion on financial statements would not have achieved that unqualified status. So it's important that as we read the improvement in regards to reporting on financial statements, we must underline the fact that the quality of that information and the quality of those financial statements was still found to be wanting when the audit was done. So as we celebrate the fact that people are able to handle the financial statements and report accurately on them, we are not yet out of the danger zone. We are still in an environment where supply chain management prescripts are not being adhered to. And that's why many of the institutions are able to achieve those unqualified with findings. These findings are significant because they largely reflect deviations from prescribed rules and regulations, particularly where they affect supply chain management processes. A 5-year depiction of the departments over the last 5 years overall reflects a picture that has not deteriorated but is showing some slight improvement, as we have indicated. So I think it's good to note that things have not gone backwards, but they also have not moved forward fast enough. And I think that's the other diagnosis that we are making in our root cause analysis, to say there is some slowness with which these issues are being tackled, and we need to pay attention to it when we examine the root causes for why these financial statements and audit outcomes remain almost stagnant if one looks at the total picture combined across provinces. But the story might also get more interesting when we look at the detail of each of the provinces, because we thought that at this level there may be an interest in looking at how each of the provinces have fared in respect of their accountability, as well as the mechanisms in place to manage and to protect the finances and to be able to report on them accurately. We will note that, for example, in the Eastern Cape, one of the things that we would like to highlight is that there have been 2 departments in this province up to 2009-10, if one looks at the journey that we've been on, that have attracted that undesirable red color of adverse and disclaimer of opinion. Those 2 departments, if you combine them with just the 2, education and health, in that province normally account for a combined total of about 75% of the provincial budget. I think it is happy to note that both of them have migrated out of the adverse and disclaimer of opinion in terms of the annual audits. And that happened starting with the Department of Basic Education a few years ago, and that department was followed by the Department of Health. What it says is that the levels of expenditure and the transparency with which the expenditure is being reported in respect of education and health in that province was found to have improved. And one of them is slowly trying to get out of this purple picture, which is about somebody who does not account for their financial management accurately and attracts a qualification. What we have left in this province is a newcomer to this adverse and disclaimer of opinions, and that newcomer is roads and transport and public works in the Eastern Cape. They were not there before. We used to have education and health, as I said. Those ones have made strides through the work that has been done by the areas of oversight, as well as the executive leadership of those 2 departments in the province, who have taken ownership of our messages and paid attention to the basic key controls that we have been preaching about, and did the basic administrative and financial control disciplines that ensure that there is enforcement of accountability. So in essence, it's early days, but we are happy for them for having moved out of that dreadful part of these audit outcomes, which is adverse and disclaimer of opinion. And we are hoping that with a similar effort that is coordinated at the provincial level, public works will soon also disappear from that. A few clean audits are starting to emerge once more while I'm still on the Eastern Cape. And those ones, the Office of the Premier and Provincial Treasury. It's good to have departments of that kind in that place, because suddenly now we may well have people who are able to provide the right level of leadership in the province, which can easily be emulated and followed by the other departments who are still struggling with getting out of unqualified with findings, as well as those that are qualified. So it's a message of things in the right direction, but more work needs to be done to make sure that the Eastern Cape, among others, also finds its rightful place in respect of achieving clean audits over time. The Free State, another steady progress in the right direction. We will note that over the last 3 years, we have not encountered a single adverse or disclaimer of an opinion in the Eastern, in the Free State. And more entities are beginning to come to the party when it comes to the yellow bar as well as the green bar, which is really a reflection that even if one or two or immaterial things may have been happening on a day-to-day basis, but if one reads the financial statements of the institutions within that province, one can clearly say that they are credible, and one cannot have the doubt in following those numbers in respect of their accuracy. However, we've noted in this province, in the Free State, among others, that while the controls that we have been insisting on, which is the basic daily discipline, the monthly reconciliation, as well as the control disciplines at month end, while these are improving, we also want to note that a lot of the improvements that would have been realized in this province are largely held back by stubborn vacancies and instability at key positions within the provincial departments. And this instability normally translates itself into frequent changes to the positions of CFO, as well as people who had the likes of supply chain management. Also, in this same province, we've made note of persistent non-compliance in areas of supply chain management, as well as the ability to proactively prevent unauthorized, irregular, and fruitless expenditure. It is also notable that within this very province, the lack of consequences for deviations from rules and regulations, as well as transgressions on prescribed rules, is starting to become a common feature among a number of auditees, to the extent that in our analysis we have picked up that almost 56% of the departments, that is those departments that are, those 13 departments, almost 56% of them do not bring about timely consequences when there are deviations from rules and regulations. In the Gauteng province, I think it is worth making note of the significant movement into the clean audit of about 5 departments within the province. We have not had anything like that over the last 5 years and started seeing over the last 2 to 3 years the emergence of only 2 departments that became clean. So they've really made some strides to make sure that at least they are moving in the direction where they said they will be by 2014. We've seen also some significant reduction in areas of unauthorized expenditure within the province of Gauteng. And this is largely on the back of provincial treasury in the province implementing appropriate controls and ensuring that the conditional grants are ring-fenced to ensure that they are spent on allocated projects. The one notable feature, though, while we are applauding and reflecting on the good progress, which we are all happy with in respect of Gauteng, is to keep a close watch on the levels of irregular expenditure. Irregular expenditure in terms of the Gauteng province is on the high side. In KZN, here we also see a picture with regards to almost remaining still overall. However, the disciplined efforts that are implemented by leadership in this province in the various departments is also contributing to the initial improvement in controls. And let me add as well on this issue of improvement of controls, that the journey that we had embarked on as an office to encourage the implementation of key controls among all of these departments and all of the provinces, which takes the form of quarterly interactions between our provincial offices as well as the departments. It was a journey that we embarked on over the last 5 years. And some of these benefits and outcomes that we are experiencing, Honorable Chair, are an early indication that the system is responding to some of those recommendations, even though the seeds were planted a number of years ago we are starting to see an early sign that things may go in the direction intended, and we are hoping that those that perform oversight over these institutions keep in mind that there's still some work that is being done which has not yet translated into good and positive audit outcomes. And that issue, I guess, applies to all of them. In Limpopo, one look at the overall picture over the last 5 years, and we have seen an overall deterioration if one looks at this province in isolation over the last 5 years. Because all of a sudden, when we did not have a red annotation on the manner in which they provide transparency and accountability over the management of the finances, we are now starting to see a red growing over the last 3 to 4 years. And certainly the absence of clean audits that used to be there is also another worrying factor. So this one would really need a effort to make sure that at least some levels of stability are brought about. In the area of disclaimer, again, the Limpopo is showing a huge concentration of the large budget departments. The likes of health, education, and public works are those three that are reflected in the Limpopo accounts as disclaimers of opinion. In Mpumalanga, we've got compliance findings in supply chain management, and difficulty in getting good quality financial statements is still one of our deep challenges in the Mpumalanga province. And this is largely driven by what we've coined poor internal controls. The controls in these departments are not strong. We've classified them as poor because they do not achieve the objective of ensuring that we can report accurately and make sure that the accounts that are distributed in the departments reflect the true state of affairs. So there's some focus that needs to be given to all of these departments in the area of Limpopo, rather Mpumalanga. Northern Cape. Northern Cape has struck a first clean audit in 2012-2013, and there is no disclaimer. And it's another development which I think needs to be applauded, because we've never seen a clean audit in this province ever since we have embarked on all of the work that we have done. And we've now got a clean audit, but that clean audit has also replaced an adverse or a disclaimer of an opinion. We hope that replacement is permanent. One of the notable developments and issues we've noted in the Northern Cape, among others, is that the compliance findings are starting to narrow. I think the leadership is taking steps in that province to improve the key controls that we have been engaging them on a quarterly basis. And we accept the fact that the only objective for improving these key controls must be about narrowing the space for anyone who may want to perform activities that are other than that which has been authorized. So it's a healthy place to be. And one of the key departments there, which we've done work with even on a performance audit basis, is the Department of Health, among others. It's one of those departments for many years that was stuck in the disclaimer part of the audit outcomes. It's moved out now. It's no longer in the disclaimer. The clean audit in the province is also social development, which I think is also very good to note, because it's one of those provinces that are much big and also require some of these services and require the resources that go into the likes of social development to be well controlled in all manner of ways, including the Department of Health. So this monitoring of key controls, when given the level of priority in the province, we can already see that these are signs of what could become a set of better outcomes over the next couple of years. In the Northwest Province, clean audits, obviously, they have and continue to escape. And we have actually welcomed also another development in the Northwest Provincial Departments, where for many years, public entities within that province had not been in a position where they were able to submit financial statements for audit. What we've seen coming to the fore in respect of the Northwest Province was to deal decisively with that backlog. We no longer have significant public entity financial statements being outstanding. And this was largely driven by an intervention of the provincial leadership in the Northwest to make sure that towards the journey of transparency and accountability, the minimum that people must at least do is to submit themselves to scrutiny. So it's a happy place to be, and we think that once these entities are also audited, they will begin to help us understand what exactly the financial management transparency issues in the province are like across the board. We still have, in this same province, challenges in regards to instability of leadership, slowness in filling vacancies in a number of places, meaning that the longer these vacancies are prolonged in the system, the more we lose the opportunity to create a sustainable set of outcomes. So that's the story with regards to the Northwest. Then lastly, the Western Cape provincial departments. When a province has got only two colors, and those colors, according to the scheme that we use here to analyze the audit outcomes, largely reflects a green and a yellow, it almost says to us, this is exactly why we say that clean audits are likely and are achievable. And I think we've seen many shades of this combination of yellow and green in other provinces, but I think in this province, that shade of green and yellow is starting to become prominent. Some few disturbances happening from time to time in 2011, 2012, but the direction that it is taking is one that is also encouraging. However, in order to maintain and to continue to improve this picture in the Western Cape, we are of the view that a rigorous and regular maintenance of effective systems of internal control is also important here. Because among others, as I said earlier on, when auditees arrive at a conclusion that gets them to an unqualified with findings, which is the yellow bar, sometimes they get complacent. And when we raise the audit outcomes and we come up with a conclusion that gets them to the yellow, what you are saying here is that, yes, you are being accurate in reporting on your financial statements, but the environment in which these financial statements are being produced is still very risky. And if you would allow a situation where these internal controls are reversed, you might end up with a lot more qualifications and adverse opinions in the future. So it's really a good outcome with a very strong caution to continue to pay attention to the area of effective monitoring systems as well as internal controls. And that is the long and short of the provinces. And I hope that, like us, we now have a very better understanding of what the state of affairs is down to each province without having written how much money went behind it. But just the illustration that we have done here gives one a sense that you know where the hotspots are, we know where the key issues that could trigger early wins, and we think that it will serve the NCOP and oversight in general for that level of focus to be deepened. And possibly, if there is not enough time during this term, which is the term of the fourth parliament, it may be of use as a document that will find its way into the handover processes, so that those that take the task forward from later this year, at least they've got a starting point to figure out what it is that needs to be done to effect continuous improvement in audit outcomes. I spoke earlier about the quality of submitted financial statements and the context around the yellow annotation, which is the unqualified with findings. The picture that we are sharing in terms of this is, had there been no opportunity to correct misstatements that were contained in the financial statements at the date of submission by the end of May 2013, had there been no opportunity to correct during the audit process, we would have ended up with a picture that looks like what we have on the left-hand side, a bigger red than the green. However, because an audit process allows for corrections to be done during the process of an audit, those that volunteered to adjust their books ended up with the bigger green on the right-hand side, meaning that the opportunity to correct their financial statements during the audit has allowed them to escape a qualification. But it's not a good thing to have, because it means that during the other months of the year, the financial statements that you produce are not reliable and are not accurate. So that's the message there, to say that even though someone could turn around and say, I've been unqualified, the question that needs to follow is, what was the quality of your final accounts at the point when you delivered them and submitted them for audit? I think it's a critical question to ask, because it's a question that brings about issues of sustainability if proper attention is given to it. The areas that attracted the large number of qualifications in respect of a number of these departments was largely in the management of property, infrastructure, plant and equipment. And I think there will be appreciation in the room when we look at the different departments in the provinces. Many of these assets are the assets that are utilized for delivering whatever services or carrying out whatever programs these departments have to carry out. Now, if the management, the probity, the transparency, and all manner of controls associated with managing assets are not well controlled, even though it's showing a slight improvement, it might be something that attracts risks and all sorts of other troubles if not addressed timeously. What we have there is just the top four, not the only issues that attracted qualifications when it comes to provincial departments. So I think it may help with some examination and oversight work to hone in on the key elements of the financial statements that cause them to end up in the trouble that they are in. We also, in the same analysis, have looked at the comparison between education, health, and public works combined in relation to other departments across the board. And the reason we do this is because we appreciate the fact that the bulk of the resources and the finances that are allocated in provinces tend to find their way into these three departments. And these are the ones that normally have 70, 75, up to sometimes 80% of the total provincial allocation. And so the outcomes in regards to the ones that absorb the bulk of the resources are also still showing some worrying trends, with only one clean audit in that category of a combined education, health, and public works portfolio, being public works in the Western Cape. The rest of them are still in that area of uncertainty as to whether their controls will hold to a point where they can become clean in the future, which is the 10, as well as the 11 and 5, who are still battling with proper accounting and proper transparent reporting. So in the comparison of these isolated three sectors, which is education, health, and public works, compared to the others, the three in this context are not doing well in relation to the rest of the other departments. So that's a point to make note of, so that, among others, our oversight effort is also following some of the areas that attract the big rand amounts. Quality of annual performance reports, we make note of some of the significant findings in terms of these reports, because the essence of this, when we look at it in relation to the financial management elements, tends to give us a very good context about what is being reported. Is it indeed what was planned to be done? Is it what we agreed must be done? Has it been reported in accordance with what has been agreed in terms of the strategic plan and all of that? And so in the quality of provincial reports, we therefore drawing attention on the next slide to areas where we found information presented in the performance report not to be useful. We found instances where the information was not reliable, and a combination of those was also found. And this is really a depiction of the extent to which we found departments in these provinces who were found wanting in respect of the usefulness of their information. And what we are dealing with here is instances where in the submission of a plan for a particular year, all manner of targets are set, but when the reporting time comes, something different to what was agreed in the targets is being reported on. And we are saying this is not useful because the monies that had been expended were meant to be spent on the stuff that was agreed in terms of the programs, not on something else. And this is what we are trying to reflect here, so that the reader of the report, when they see glorious achievements in certain areas, they must at least know that this is what they said must be achieved instead of something else that was done without the necessary clearance if there was a need for environments and all of that. We just draw attention on the next slide to specifically the areas and or the departments that had those major problems in respect of usefulness of information or reliability of information. And this is issues of reliability is where we cannot find where they got the information they are reporting from. So we're saying that if we are to test it, we would like to make sure that it comes from a source that we can rely on. The annual performance reports on the sector that we are comparing to the rest again shows some combination and concentration of issues pertaining to usefulness and reliability. And I think it's an important matter for purposes of oversight to be looked at so that we can assist these departments in effecting the improvements to manage and to coordinate their reporting properly. Status of compliance with legislation, as I said, material findings in almost 83% of the auditees in regards to the compliance with legislation. And a lot of the people, as we said, according to what is depicted in this graph, have been deviating or not complying with legislation for quite a period of time. And that picture is stuck and is not showing any signs of improvement. And these specific areas that are being deviated from, one of them is the quality of financial statements submitted for auditing, hence those late adjustments that happened during the audit process, management of procurement and contracts, as well as prevention and follow-up of unauthorized as well as fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So these are the things that also lead us to the conclusion that we do not see the coming into effect of consequences in these areas, because for as long as these consequences are not forthcoming, we remain with these kind of findings most of the time. And if we look at the Public Finance Management Act, while we are at it and reporting on it, in Section 38 of the Act, there is set out a series of responsibilities that attach to an accounting officer. If I take an example of the one on prevention of unauthorized, irregular, and wasteful expenditure, it is set out very clearly in the Public Finance Management Act in Section 38 that it is one of those functions that an accounting officer needs to perform. Then if one looks also at Section 81 of the PFMA, which deals with matters of misconduct, it also says there that when a person in a position of an accounting officer fails to comply with the requirements set out, among others, in Section 38, that is clearly defined as misconduct, among others. And then the Section 86 of the PFMA that deals with offenses and penalties is also clearly laid out as to what would happen to somebody who is defined in section 38 who didn't do what was intended in that section. So when we talk about consequences, we are talking about the things that are already laid out in the Public Finance Management Act. But on an ongoing basis, when we follow up, we do not see what action has been taken and therefore what has come out on the other end to try and prevent the continuation of matters like irregular expenditure, unauthorized and irregular expenditure. So we just want to make note of this and say that it's something that may not necessarily require to be created from scratch. It's there. The question is we do not see its application when we do follow-up audits. Unauthorized expenditure. One welcome feature of this is that there is still some unauthorized expenditure in a number of these departments. However, we've seen that a lot of this unauthorized expenditure now is beginning to be picked up by the auditees up front. If you look at the blue line compared to the previous year, they didn't really volunteer quite a lot of this in the past, but now, because of the awareness and the creation of the awareness that was driven by the key controls program, they are beginning to volunteer and pick it up front. What we are also insisting on the same slide, and I think it's the same point that I'll raise on the irregular expenditure, if you move to the next slide on irregular expenditure, is a similar trend. The blue indicating that the auditees have identified and put it on the table themselves because the accounting officer, among other things, is required to identify and report instances of irregular and unauthorized expenditure. So what is emerging is they are taking control, but we also have the view that this is a detection control. It's a control that detects the occurrence of irregular expenditure and unauthorized expenditure after the event. What we're trying to put across here is that it is desirable that we actually focus on having prevention controls. Because if the detection controls to find what it is are working, then the prevention controls ought to be identified and made to work. Therefore, if the prevention controls are strong, there may be less need for the detection controls because you know that you have put robust controls to prevent irregular expenditure and such expenditure from happening, and therefore you put less investment in trying to detect it because you know that you have done the stuff up front to make sure that it doesn't come about. Because in this area of irregular expenditure, unfortunately, there's many instances of wastage. So it's almost like position yourself to catch the wastage rather than positioning yourself to prevent the wastage from happening in the first place. And that's, I think, the point that we think is emerging here and is very important to keep an eye on. Fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The picture once more shows that there's still elements of this. But the numbers, if one looks at it, are, yes, not desirable because we're talking about $1 billion odd here, and the large portion of it is actual instances which reflect on inefficiencies in certain instances, because this is where you pay penalties unnecessarily because somebody who's supposed to submit certain returns doesn't do it on time, or certain goods and services are bought but nobody planned their utilization. Either somebody who needs to use a computer has not been trained, but the computer has been bought and it's sitting in the strong room in some cases. Lastly, I just want to focus very quickly now on the risk areas. We've identified the risk areas that attract a lot of the qualifications that we are reporting on in this period. And these risk areas are predominantly supply chain, as I said earlier, the quality of performance reports, as well as human resource management insofar as vacancies and stability of leadership is concerned. And again, the quality of financial statements. This is really provided to give the context and the extent of the issues of risk that continue to engulf departments and provinces. I spoke earlier about the role, the root causes, the drivers of all of these controls, which are needed. We are seeing an improvement in all three categories. In the past, we've mentioned that if leadership does not take proactive steps, and we've seen in some of these provinces that we are reporting on, where leadership has taken steps to deal with issues, we've seen what has come out in terms of the overall outcomes in the Northern Cape. We have seen similar trends in areas like Gauteng, and we still think that there's a significant role that leadership can play in improving these controls. Even though it's improved from 29 to 39 now, this is a sign of what it is that can be achieved when the right levels of leadership act on these issues. And this is where we think that the game will be won if we enhance the role and the effectiveness of the leadership in driving improvement of controls. The disciplines that we still want to insist need to be embraced and institutionalized is the area of proper record keeping and daily and monthly controls. Because if these are in place, it does not matter when there is a change in the personnel in the department, because if these controls are there and they are a regular routine that gets overseen by those that exercise oversight, people can come and go for as long as we've got very robust and strong systems of internal control to protect and to prevent these assets from being alienated in a number of instances. The root causes, as identified overall in respect of the PFMA 1213, we still are focusing on the three areas. The slow response in a number of cases to respond to audit recommendations despite commitments made. And we understand here that we will not be able to get accelerated focus in this area in the manner that we desire. But we think that a better focus in addressing audit outcomes in the PFMA environment could achieve better results in the future. Lack of consequences for poor performance and transgressions, I've already dealt and spoken at length about it. And the area of instability and vacancies in key positions. A lot of this will obviously also incorporate such things as long-standing suspensions that never get resolved, which means that when there are those instances, a lot of people in the lower positions do not get sufficient level of supervision in the work that they perform. And therefore, things do fall apart at the end of the financial year when they report. And this is one of the key root causes that get us to have this hope that these audit outcomes would improve, but they remain stagnant because we have instability and people who do not record the corporate memory of the work that they do in their respective departments. When they walk with it. And on the back of this, what would typically happen will be running away to find external service providers in the form of consultants to come and assist. We don't say that they are not desirable, but the manner in which they come in to assist in correcting financial statements is normally when you are on the back foot and you are not able to bargain properly for the good, solid outcome that you might get if you had prepared for it all up front. And Honorable Chair, from our side, we thank you very much indeed for giving us this opportunity to share these outcomes with you. We are encouraged by the fact that having tabled this report in November, we are now embarking seriously on focusing on the very key levels and levers of oversight that will assist in taking these outcomes to a level of improvement in the future. And thank you very much to NCOP for affording us that opportunity, because we believe in the context of your coordination work and oversight work that translates into provincial departments and provincial sphere of government, this may provide you an additional tool that will empower you to get to these outcomes that all of us desire. They could at least be green in the not too distant future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nkweta, Auditor-General of South Africa, for your presentation. Page 17 and 19 is important pages. With regard to Limpopo, 5 provincial departments are currently under administration. There are programs in place to get improvement in those departments because the Select Committee for Finance in the NCOP, together with the other relevant committees, were dealing with this intervention as referred to those committees. So we are expecting an improvement in audit outcomes for the year 2014-15. They appeared frequently before the select committees, and we submitted our reports to Parliament, to the National Council of Provinces. The other good news is Northern Cape. Mr. Makoko is here, the head of Treasury. The Director General is here, Mr. Becky, and the Accountant General. It's my province. I served on Scopa there for 10 years. And for the 11th year, for the first time, Department of Health came out of a disclaimer. So the medicine they applied now started to work. For 10 years, it didn't work. So there are improvements. Thank you for your overall picture telling us that there are improvements. And how do we build on this? That is a positive point that we must highlight today. The action plan from the Auditor-General, the action plans from provincial and national departments, and the action plans from committees in Parliament, standing committees in the portfolio committees in the NA, and select committees in the National Council of Provinces. Coming to the action plan, dealing with quarterly reports, not only the spending side of it, but the performance side as well. Does it match? In terms of the performance plan and budget submitted in the beginning of the year. And that is where we must be vigilant as members of Parliament in our committees, that things don't slip through. Thank you very much for your presentation. Honourable members, we're going to engage now with the presentation by way of questions. Let me start on, I expected Honourable Mashile to be first. I'm going to give you a number because it's a big meeting. Honourable Mashile is first. You are second. On my right-hand side, anyone else? Number 3, from the Free State. On my left-hand side, number 4, also from the Free State. Number 5, KZN, where the sun rises. That order, Eastern Cape. Right. You can kick off.
Thanks, Chairperson. We can repeat to really thank the presentation that has been made. Chair, there is one thing which I have picked up that I think it is a little bit crucial in the total picture that is being presented to us. The slide that talks to adjustments of annual financial statements which led to improved audit outcome. I'm actually picking that up, that it has the capacity to change the total picture. Now, what I actually wanted to hear from the Auditor-General is, what are the enabling factors or limiting factors for that specific activity to happen? Chair, I'm raising this because we have got a lot of entities who uses consultants. One doesn't know when the audit is done, these consultants are available. Because then if these consultants are not available, then they may be sitting with people that doesn't have capacity to understand the things that they are raising, then they may not be able to make adjustments. If the consultants are available, then I see a different picture, that the things that are being raised for corrections during the audit may be corrected and improve the audit outcome. So I just wanted to know, because it is really not a complete, a seamless process to say, when they pick up anything, material misstatements on the annual financial statements, and then the people that are sitting in front of them will be having the capacity to deal with them. So I actually just wanted to know from their side, what is that they are picking up when this needs to be changed? What influences those misstatements to be changed? Is it officials with capacity, or what is that is happening? Because it looks to be a serious factor of changing the total audit outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Mashile. We recognize the presence of the Chief Whip of the National Council of Provinces, Honourable Ntonambi. Welcome, Chief Whip. Number 2.
Well, my name is Hlomane Chauke, number 2. I want to firstly appreciate the wonderful work that has been done by departments across provinces. But again, to appreciate the work done by the Auditor-General on a campaign around the provinces to motivate and to assist, highlight those issues that needs attention to different departments. I just want to come back to the role of oversight, meaning that ourselves, obvious, because part of what I did not pick up, when we opened the workshop, I did not hear what has been resolved in the last workshop with regard to the resolution taken as you have engaged. Some of us who are newcomers, you'll have wanted to build into what has been discussed in the last, meaning that the role of the legislatures, the role of the NCOP, as the chair spoke about coordination. The reason that I'm raising this point is because there are 2 areas that are of concern to me. One is, the issue of resolutions of oversight committees, in particular public accounts committees, to the legislature, which require implementation by the executive. It's an area that needs serious attention. One, because in all legislatures, I'm not sure the status of the NCOP, we don't have a dedicated committee responsible to monitor implementation of these recommendations. Because it comes to the point of the role of oversight, that we grill this department, they appear before us, we pass these resolutions. They go to the House, they disappear. Then come after another financial year, we meet, we do the very same exercise again. I'm therefore saying that for the purpose of coordination, it had to start with legislatures to establish this oversight committees within the office of the speakers, just to make sure that whatever that has been passed by the legislature as a resolution to a particular department is monitored from the start to the implementation and the report back to the legislature. It really makes mockery of oversight if we go, we pass the resolution and then they disappeared. Because I'm saying that with the progress that has been registered today, it's very important that that particular area will have to be attended. It becomes an instruction of what must happen in all legislatures. I mean, coming down again, if you have to go to MFA, you'll find that in the municipalities. The second area is the record management and record keeping. Most of our provincial government do not have a proper archiving system to keep records. If you had to refer to lists that was signed 5 years ago, you'll never find any document in any province. Maybe I think Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, they do have. I think it's something that we need to encourage NCOP to assist with the Department of Arts and Culture, because they have that particular mandate to deal with issues of record keeping, record management at all levels, in fact, national, provincial, and even at local level. Because if you go to local level, The problem you'll find there that Auditor-General, when he gets there, there's no information. Not even a financial statement that you'll find at local government level. And it becomes a serious problem. I therefore think that with these two comments that I'm making, it sort of makes sense to the role of oversight, meaning that the energy that we put, we are able to see the results of what we are doing now as politicians, because it's through leadership at the political level that will therefore assist to make sure that there's compliant and there's recourse. Because the General raises this issue again. Recourse will be able to monitor it through the action that has been taken by executive, reporting back to the legislature either through the committees of legislature or through the House itself. So for me, issues of resolutions of committees which end up to be resolutions of the House, it's very critical for us to be able to achieve the clean audit. Now we are at 2014 and beyond, obviously it does not end there. So lastly is the capacity of committees to do their work, necessary resources. Most of our committees do not even have proper office staff, proper tools to work, and it's something that NCOP will have to look at together with provinces. Because if we can be able to capacitate with training again, not only politicians who are there, but the core staff that remain after we are leaving in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, 2 months or 3 months. That core staff is very critical, because these are the people who will be able to take through the incoming leadership with regard to the issues, in particular public accounts, because those are very critical committees of the legislature. So those are my points, and I thought I would end here. Thank you very much.
The Chief Whip will do the way forward when we come to the last part of the program. Chief Whip is present. But I just want to sensitize members that, honorable members, we had several engagements at the Lagoon Beach Hotel, where chairs of chairs, chief whips, speakers, deputy speakers, and personnel from provincial legislators and the NCOP were engaging with each other in terms of action plans. And what is very important, that in your committee you must have a tracking mechanism on resolutions the committee took. Because you must go back to what you have decided, what must happen. Did it happen? That's why that engagement with quarterly reports is so important. That you can go back and say, what we said you must do 1, 2, and 3. What did you do? Number 4. Oh, number 3, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Chair, what I'm going to raise, maybe it makes me naive because I'm not a financial person. But when it comes to issue of auditing, I just want to check with the Office of the Auditor-General. You'll say there is improvement from adverse to qualified to unqualified with fundings, and so on. But let us come to unqualified with findings. You say it's an improvement. But if you look at those findings, they involve millions and billions. And to me, I can't say it's an improvement because there is a lot of money that is involved there, coming to irregular expenditure, fruitless expenditure, and so on. I don't know, is there any way that could show that although it's unqualified, there is a lot of wrongdoing that is taking place. The second one is the issue of consequences. The previous Auditor-General was complaining about consequences, and the current one is also complaining about the consequences. Whose fault is it? Because I think there must be somebody who has to monitor this and see to it there are consequences. Or is it us as politicians? We are failing to do what we are supposed to do. Because also I would be requesting maybe if the Auditor-General would be coming up with recommendations to say, to circumvent this, we are recommending that you have to do this. Because if we don't correct this, every year, even after him, the Auditor-General will be coming, will still be saying there are no consequences. And those consequences means that the culprits are not being punished. And it will still recur for many years to come. Thanks.
Thank you. Number 4.
Thank you, Chair, and I would like to thank the Auditor-General too for his presentation. Sorry, I must just come back to one thing, the use of consultants. In the states, that's the Free States, for a starter, I don't think there is one municipality that hasn't outsourced, if you like to call it, all their books, their accountancy to consultants. Now, in the worst case scenario, here you have people who are supposed to be paid to do the job, but the consultants are doing it. So they're paying actually virtually double, you can say. Then in the best case scenario, some of the smaller municipalities, I'm using them as an example, have decided, well, they're giving all their work to the consultants, so therefore they do not fill the vacant posts. Now, at some stage or other, there was supposed to be a skills transfer. Has the Auditor-General given it any contemplation or thought, like over a period of 3 years, 5 years, whatever year, then consultants must be phased out and there must be a skills transfer taking place. Otherwise, we're just going to go into a worse scenario with people not getting the necessary skills. Thanks, Chair.
Number Lees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the AG. One of the advantages of coming in late is that you can rely on other honourable members to ask your questions for you. But nevertheless, I wish to just build a little bit on Honourable Mashila, who agrees with me and me with him on many issues. With regard to this question of changing midstream, as it were, during the audit and the improvements that take place. And my question to the AG is this: is there not a position whereby your department is being co-opted into achieving unqualified audits rather than doing the job that your department's supposed to be doing and doing the audit? In other words, is there not a danger that you're becoming part of the solution rather than being the policeman, as it were, for this? Because if it is your target to achieve unqualified audits, then your staff will perhaps bend the rules to achieve the unqualified audits. And I wonder whether there is not a danger of that happening, particularly when you see the dramatic change. And there's nothing wrong with a management letter and going through with the departments and solving the problems. That's common. It's common in private enterprise. So that's not really the issue, but I'm concerned about the danger of the co-option of your department into this target. And Mr. Chairman, the question that Honourable Jacobs has asked about consequences is a very valid one. And I was wondering whether, in order to break the cycle, it might be appropriate, and in my experience in accounting, probably I can answer my own question, but let me ask the question, would it be appropriate for the AG to recommend consequences where there are quite clear deviations, and so that those can become part of the record and can be followed up? Because it's one thing to say wasteful expenditure in this instance occurred, or whatever the deviation is, without saying, well, this is what happened, this is what the consequences should be, and these are the people who should face those consequences. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The AG's role is to identify what went wrong in a department in terms of the audit and the audit outcome. Parliament and legislators must enforce the PFMA. This is not something new. The AG started years ago with a structure called APAC. That's where we did courses on the PFMA. Also section 181 to 86. In Limpopo, 302 investigations is underway. We got a report from the Anti-Corruption Task Team, the ACTT, any committee can call them to Parliament that they come and account what's happening in provinces. So the mechanisms are there. We must just enforce it and implement it. Number 6.
No,
Yes, I've got you.
Thank you, Chair. I want to appreciate and welcome the AG's report. You know, Chair, one thing that I think is not working well. I've been a member of SCOPA in Gauteng for close to 10 years. We have made a lot of recommendations. We've made a lot of recommendations. To date, it does not happen. 2 weeks ago, we had a committee meeting of COGTA, where we informed that 20 municipalities in the Eastern Cape have serious financial and problematic problems. Just 2 weeks ago. In the Eastern Cape. Prior to that, it was in the media that Madibeng had these particular problems. Now, ourselves as a committee, came from Wheatbank. We went through section 139 issues. As a committee, we went there. We made recommendations. Now, throughout the last 5 years, I have not seen a single recommendation being implemented besides one in the Free State where a municipal manager was arrested. Besides, throughout the whole country, besides in the Free State, where the municipal manager was arrested. Now, Chair, you are telling us that we must enforce what you are saying in terms of that particular document. You are raising a document in front of us. How do we deal with that thing? Well, I have asked the AG, Nombembe, before him, in Gauteng several times, that how do we deal with all these particular problems when I was still in SCOPA? Now you raise a document. That document means nothing to us. The chair of SCOPA is sitting here from Gauteng. He will tell you very well. I was part of his committee. Now, you know, it's very well to say we must follow certain. Now, you know, this thing about sanctions becomes very important. Now, the AG, one major weakness, and I will present that, is that the AG says to us, they go to a municipality or they go to a provincial or any department, they deal with specific issues. No? They want people to make presentations. Even if when they find fault, they want an explanation to qualify those particular people. That's what the AG says to us. And they told us in SCOPA, when I was still in Gauteng, they told me here, when I'm in COGTA, the same situation. You know? Now, what is it that they are trying to do and deal with to eradicate this particular problem that we have?
Honorable
Because-
Matila, can you come to the point, please?
No, the point I'm trying to raise, what is their major role because they must assist us to deal with those. Because you are telling about specific documents and the AG. I don't see, you know, this report is a dossier report. I've just given you a picture of what is happening in the Eastern Cape. Go to the Northwest.
Honorable Matila, can you summarize, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. I've made my point.
Honorable members, this document is law. That's what it is. This is the law. If you break the law, there will be a consequence. And we've got examples of consequences. I apologize to Honorable van Lingen. Please put your question.
Thank you, Chairperson. I must say that somebody did come up for the Eastern Cape, for which I have to thank him. But what I find very interesting by the Auditor-General is the fact that when he was discussing the Northwest, he said that some of the provincial departments or entities of departments are now actually beginning to submit audit reports. And I'm a little bit concerned here because we need to know which ones are not submitting reports. And if they are not submitting reports, what are the consequences? And are there investigations about all this? And then I need to ask what the situation is with the different houses of traditional leaders, and are they submitting annual financial statements? And if so, are they counting under the entities? And if not, how does that one work? And are there any consequences for not submitting? Thank you.
Honorable Hube and then Honorable Sabandi.
No, thanks, Honorable Chairperson. Let me join other members by acknowledging and thanking the presentation from the AG. One is aware that your office, AG, tried to send officials to help municipalities and or provinces where the challenges of capacity, and you also have periodic interventions to departments and or provinces or municipalities. We've set ourselves a target of by 2014 we'll get clean audit. I would request from your own mouth to say, where are we now as we end our term? From the target that you have set, where are we? In which percentage maybe are we now? So that as an exit report, we're able to say this is what we've done, and this will serve as a report that will help the new administration in terms of addressing those areas. However, what we've done now, this is how far we've done. And this is the last one. Yeah, thanks, Chairperson.
Honorable Sabandi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I'd like to comment with very few. Number one is to commend the AG about his marvelous work, because there is a difference if you compare in this timetable which you're giving to us, that where we are coming from and where we are at the moment. And then, but nevertheless, I'll comment with one or two. Number one is about the issue of supply chain management. I think supply chain management is another contributing factor of waste and fruitless expenditure. I'll be happy, not even now, maybe, so that maybe the AG can maybe guide us to help us as NCOP in some of the provinces where there are that practice. I'll put an example. In your own input, when you were giving an audit outcome, You indicated about challenges, for an example, the issue of Northwest, whereby you indicated about challenges contributed by instability of leadership and slow pace of filling vacancies. But even with this one, if you can guide us so that as chairpersons, we can be empowered to have a focus that which maybe section specifically which is having a challenge. And then also another contribution factor is the issue of risk management. Let me put it like it is alleged that in some cases there are no risk management. In some cases there are risk management. Either they are weak as well. Because once the risk management is weak, or if it's not there, you must expect problems, challenges, because these are key sectors which can highlight if there are problems. Like to put more flesh, 80, you see, we were impressed about your intervention in Limpopo. There is a huge difference. You can't underestimate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I recognize the member there.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Sipho Makamo. There are 3 points that I wanted to talk to. And please, what member, I won't dwell to that. Perhaps the issues that are raised, there is a general challenge that appears on the report, and maybe we must appreciate the good work that identifies key shortcomings that are there by the AG, which then comes to us as a challenge, as an oversight body. What is it that we must do? And two, on the remarks, Chair, is that we can't be the ones who question what is the document, PFMA. You are correct, I agree with you that we are the ones who should lead by example. Chair, the Speakers Forum, I think, is key here. So that the Speaker, I want to recommend that the Speakers Forum be recommended to that they identify key elements of oversight that all legislatures must look at on the basis of the outcome of the report, such that, you see, we're doing oversight, but we must not do it haphazardly. It must be coordinated. That one department goes to Gauteng, it must find the same attitude of the manner in which we are dealing with oversight from all over the country. I think that's the first point that we should look at. And the other point, Chair, is what is it that we mean when we're talking about consequence management? Part of oversight, Chair, should look at because if you say we have warned one official, that can be called consequential management. However, on my part, is it equal to the digression that an individual has caused? We must be able to value those things. So that's the second point, Chair, that when we're talking about that. And the AG has raised an important point about the regular expenditure, which is transversal, because most of the time irregular expenditure becomes a point that is raised by the AG, but might be looked at as something that is not significant. But I think that we must have an attitude that seeks to say this is an important aspect that we are dealing with. Because in most cases, you find that departments do not want to pay in 30 days.
They are avoiding to pay in 30 days, either because if they can pay, it will be an unauthorized expenditure, it will be beyond their budget, and so on and so on. So that if we coordinate, if there is a coordinated approach on the spending patterns and so on, a quarterly report by each and every department that on this particular month, this is how far we are spending. So that oversight must be able to can also determine. Perhaps it will also be able to answer certain questions that are raised in the House, that what is it that we must do? Which I think these are questions that must go back to us. We don't ask the AG those questions. Because already the AG has done his work. Ours is to begin to then adjust ourselves to how are we approaching these issues insofar as us having put a target for ourselves that by 2014, we are contributing towards ensuring clean audit to the departments and entities in the country. So I think that these 3 points, Chair, added to that, the supply chain management, the main issue is compliance about it. People do not comply, or people, because once you say people must be dealt with, this thing of dealing with junior officials must come to an end. It is us who must deal with it properly. We must find a way of what do we mean by compliance and non-compliance and consequential management regarding those particular things that are raised by the AG. And the challenge is on us that what is it that we are going to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You captured it actually very well. Very well. Auditor-General, you're welcome to reply. Members, there won't be a formal tea break. Tea and coffee is ready outside. Get your cup, come into your desk, and that we proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the honorable members for all the questions. We have taken note of the comments that have been made to try and strengthen the area of oversight. We think those are very welcome comments. They are all part of this journey that we have associated ourselves with. And I think that in the course of events, a lot of these things are going to become reality once. I think the good point is that they have been identified by the people who have the power to act on them. And I think it's important that when they assess some of the information that we present, they may find in that information there are certain answers that are available for them to act. So I think the part regarding that side of the oversight, I will leave there. Maybe just to deal with 1 or 2 elements of what was raised again. And one of them is the whole question of the purpose of an annual financial statement audit. I'd like to deal with this perhaps in saying that the financial activities that are reported on in the financial statements are largely managed and driven by the management of the institution. Our role as auditors is to audit the books after the monies have been spent. Now, in the process of managing the books and writing up the books, we do expect that some people will make errors, whether it's an error of judgment or whether it's a tactical error or an error of commission or an error of omission. We do expect that an audit, when it goes and examines the books, it will look for the stuff that is what is not expected. And fortunately, we are lucky because we do find these errors, even though nobody told us that they exist. So that's the first part. Then the second part is to reflect on the purpose of reporting on annual financial statements and auditing them. The purpose of auditing annual financial statements for an auditor is to express an opinion on fair presentation of the financial statements. Now, that's the objective that must be achieved. The financial statements, when they are reported on, they must be fair. They must represent a fair state of affairs when it comes to the assets, the liabilities, the expenditure, the income, disclosure, all of those requirements. When somebody in the middle of an audit owns up to the fact that in their debtors, which is money is owing to them, they have made a mistake and did not allocate 100 million that they already received last week in the bank. Because they did not know who this 100 million was paid by, they put it in the bank, but they created a credit somewhere in a different suspense account because they are uncertain as to who is paying them 100 million rands. If they made that error, we are allowing them as an auditor to correct it because they are saying they are wanting to achieve fair presentation. That's what an audit does in the public sector, in the private sector, globally and locally. So the space for adjustments in an audit, to answer the question about why we allow it, it is influenced by the reality that people do not always have everything done 100% correct. And therefore an audit gives them a chance to achieve fair presentation. Because if they didn't correct, they would have shown a set of books that reflects a data that is 100 million short, another account that is a credit that is sitting in the background to show that they did receive 100 million from the bank. Now, a third party who is looking at these financial statements when they read them will be misled if they are not corrected. Because they will read in these financial statements an amount that is owing by somebody that is 100 million short. However, if they were given the opportunity to correct, they would have shown the true state of affairs, which is fair presentation. And that's why adjustments have got a space in an audit, is from that perspective. Because it is an attempt to try and encourage people to do the right thing. And so once they've done the right thing through adjustments, then we can come to a conclusion on their financial statements. Secondly, the issue about the danger of co-option because we are targeting unqualified opinions. The target for unqualified opinions is not our target, because the responsibility for the presentation of financial statements is the responsibility of management. Our responsibility is to audit and to report on them. So we can never associate ourselves with that target. But we work with that target because we believe it's the right thing to be chased. So we cooperate with management, cooperate by not doing for them that which they must have done themselves. But we provide a monitoring mechanism to make sure that they have addressed all the possible technical complications that come with managing finances, among others. So we will say to them, if you do not understand that you've got an amount in your books of 100 million rands as a debtor, and there's an accounting standard that requires you to do all manner of things because there's a change in the interest rates, we will come in there to provide them our technical expertise because we understand that some people may not keep abreast of some technical developments when it comes to accounting matters. So the assistance that we provide is more of a monitoring nature to make sure that the right thing is constantly promoted and done. And we've got safeguards in the institution to make sure that we do not do for management that which management should have done themselves. Ours is to bring an independent evaluation of what management has done. Otherwise, if we left them to their own devices, they will still have to go somewhere else to go find that technical assistance anyway. So we really are not in a space where we can say we are co-opted. And of course, there are a lot of other processes and procedures within the institution that we apply to prevent this from happening, because some people may lose focus and think that they are now consulting to their auditees. So we do have safeguards that we use to prevent that familiarity risk from becoming our challenge. And Chair, let me leave it at this on the understanding that my opening comment regarding the relevance and the essence of the rest of those other oversight comments remains relevant, and I'm sure they will continue to be picked up in similar engagements in the future. Thank you.
Thank you to the AG. Honorable van Lingen, Honorable Magoro.
Chairperson, was my question answered fully?
Honorable
Yeah.
Mr. Mkweta.
Okay. In the, sorry about that, honourable member. There was a specific report about the traditional. There's a number of traditional trusts that we had audited. Some have submitted and are audited, and others have not submitted. So, if you wanted to have a look at the status of those submissions and who has been audited and who has not, it is in the general report, the very big general report, right at the back, annotated as Annexure 1. The detail of who was audited and who was not is in Annexure 1 in the general report. And we have listed it by province as well. Thank you.
Honorable Magoro.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've been listening to the AG responding to the questions and the very last input. He talks about an unfair reporting. Now, one would like to know what is unfair reporting by a department, when it is expected that the department must table a fair report. What makes it unfair? And we are talking about management in department, quite a layer of management. And I would think that one of those management would be what is called an internal auditor. And we talk about fruitful or fruitless expenditure and unauthorized expenditure. When one takes the responsibility of the internal auditor, one would think that those would be the responsibility that has to be executed by the internal auditor to guard against fruitless expenditure and against unauthorized expenditure. Now, I want to know, in a department like that, what is actually happening there? Are there no people who are in a position to exercise this responsibility? And eventually, what is an unfair reporting? Thank you, Chair.
AG, you can reply.
Thank you, Chair. If I may just deal with the fair presentation, I think that's what I was talking about, fair presentation. And perhaps in illustrating it by way of an example, if a department has got 20 million rands to spend, and they do all the things that they said they will spend with that 20 million rands, we as auditors do not test every single amount that makes up the 20 million rands. We will test based on our risk assessment, our analysis of the environment, and many other factors. We will test a sample of that total 20 million rands. Hence, our report never reads, these financial statements are absolutely correct. We never make that conclusion. So fair presentation is then a lower level of assurance than completely accurate. So what you are saying is that these people who are looking after these monies have taken all reasonable steps that can be expected of them, despite the fact that they may already have lost 50,000 rands from that 20 million rands without them knowing. But we think that they did not try to pull wool over the eyes of the person reading the financial statements. That's what fair presentation is trying to communicate in real terms. It's an acknowledgement that not every one of the transactions was tested. However, those that we looked at, including our understanding of the environment in which these numbers are being produced, is such that an ordinary person reading these books will appreciate and understand and acknowledge them for what they are. So that's fair presentation. So we're saying that you've done everything humanly possible to protect, to do the things you said you will do, and you have actually come forward and reported on them as accurately as we believe you ought to have, based on our examination of the records. Then we come to a conclusion that says fair presentation. And fair presentation is normally achieved by those people that we say are unqualified, because we had an expectation for them to present fairly, and we do not want to qualify that expectation of fair presentation. That's an audit, and that's what it's trying to achieve. I hope I am not attracting an additional question to this, but that's in essence what it says, because we do know that in the midst of all the things that happen in any department, things do go wrong. But if fair presentation is the hurdle and it's achieved, we know that everything is fine, despite the fact that there are other things that may not be fine, which we do not know about. But we believe that in the bigger scheme of things, they are not so big as to change the mind of a person reading those financial statements. The role of internal auditor, I think, is a point I would like to reinforce, to say departments, if they want to deal decisively with matters of unauthorized, irregular, and wasteful expenditure, can only find a reliable partner in an internal auditor. Perhaps the challenge now is for them to look deeper at the internal audit functions that they have and test whether they are providing them or they are being supported in providing the level of assurance required from an internal auditor. So we are on the same page, even on that particular one. Hence, I'm saying that it's just for me to reinforce the very real essence of what internal audit is supposed to achieve. Thank you, Chair.
I recognize Honorable Mashile.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I actually just wanted to restate the question that I asked, probably to get a response, because it is based on slide 17, Chair. Slide 17 of the presentation. To me, it is critical. Actually, what I actually wanted there is that when they were doing audits, were there auditees whom, when they pointed out on misstatements, they failed to correct them? Were there auditees that when they pointed out these misstatements, like this 34, and then they corrected it? Now, if on both occasions, what is that is critical in order to make the necessary changes on the annual financial statements? Are you picking up a problem of skills where maybe the financial management, because of lack of skills, even when you point the misstatements, they fail to understand that it is a misstatement and therefore they can't correct? Where they are using consultants, are you seeing an improvement? When you point out these things, then they get corrected, so that we actually know the impact on the corrections to avoid these qualifications. Whether if we move towards consultants, we know that then all annual financial statements, when they go through you, they will reflect a fair presentation. Or we should then be talking to our own managements in the department and municipalities who are actually handling this particular process to ensure that they are upgraded, to ensure that they can respond to the issues that you raise, if at the moment they are a stumbling block, in order to actually correct what you would have indicated to be a wrong thing. That's actually what I wanted to understand from your side. Thank you.
Mr. Makwetu.
Oh, thank you, Chair, and thanks very much, Honorable Mashile, for the question. On this one, there's two categories. There are those that correct, and then when they correct, they get to improve their conclusion, depending on what it is that they corrected. There are those that do not want to correct, and I think it's a very important point, because then it means that if somebody does not want to correct something that has been identified as an error, what motivates them to not want to correct? I think that's an important point that needs to be probed further. Because those that correct know that if there was something that they didn't want to be known to have happened, it will now be known because it's transparently in the financial statements. Whereas somebody who doesn't want to correct may not want it to be known that there's something that ought to be in the financial statements, and therefore they are prepared to live with a qualification of the accounts. And the reason they are prepared to live with a qualification of the accounts, among others, may also be prompted by the fact that they know even if their accounts are qualified, there is going to be no consequence that follows them in respect of that. So they've achieved two things. They've achieved the, if you want to say, not reflecting and reporting accurately, that they've achieved, but they've also achieved something else, and that is not to have anything following them if their accounts end up with a bad conclusion, like a qualification. So I think it's an important point, to elevate from an oversight point of view, so that if one gets a list of those that were shown errors and didn't want to correct, then the inquiry must be about why did you not want to correct these ones? Why are you prepared to sit with stuff that you are told is not accurate, and you're still prepared to sit with it? So clearly from that point of view, I will agree. And then the issue of the consultants is a very tricky one, because these consultants, when they come into departments or municipalities, they come via different routes. One of the routes is on the back of nobody in the institution having the skills to do the job. So you get there as a consulting firm that came to assist with producing financial statements, then you don't find the records from which to prepare financial statements. So you come in as a consultant, you spend the time, you spend the money, you go away having achieved nothing better than when you came in. Because you can't help it yourself as a consultant, because you rely on the people in the institution to provide invoices that substantiate transactions, to provide contracts that explain certain transactions. And if you are an outsider coming to help with financial statements, you will not be able to achieve that objective because you do not have the people that worked with it available to assist you to get them a better result. So there are also those challenges that sit with the consulting service, because it's not a case of they are coming in when everything that is needed is on the table. Sometimes they themselves battle with getting access to information. So I think those are some of the things that require further interrogation, but that's the status of what we have seen in our analysis of consultants and so on. Then the issue of the transfer of skills, while I've got the floor, Chair, is also a problem, because when people are responding on a knee-jerk to the fact that they do not have appropriate skills, it's difficult for them to even sit down with a consultant and say, you will transfer X, Y, Z skills, because sometimes they also have vacancies. So when the consultant comes in the finance department to assist them, it won't help them even if they wanted to develop a plan to transfer skills, because in those areas that they may have wanted to transfer skills in finance, they've been running with vacancies over time. So it becomes difficult even with the transfer of skills part. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member here.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, I'm Abraham Dandiso from the Eastern Cape. Maybe the first take I want to raise with the AG is the issue of Western Cape performance. Whether, in your view, as AG, the performance is due to the current government in power there, or has this been a trend in the Western Cape? And secondly, for the Eastern Cape, you have added roads and public works as now a bad performer in as far as audit opinion is concerned. I just want to know whether there are specific issues about that department, or is it because of the general trend that you quoted in terms of infrastructure generally in government departments? Lastly, AG, the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature did have a clean audit. I think it was 2010-11, Dwandone. I think 2010-11. But the issue was that it backslided, so to speak, in the following financial year. What would be your advice on sustaining good performance by the various departments, especially that? Otherwise, Chair, I just also wanted to thank the AG for the presentation and also really encourage that the relations that have been started by the outgoing AG be continued, both in the provinces and nationally. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member.
Well, just my point to add into the point that is raised by the colleague that side on the issue of the Western Cape, our assessment is the level of skills that exist in the Western Cape compared to the rest of the country. One that you find in one example is that you find a town with 5 engineers in George, 3 town planners, when a municipality in Madibeng does not even have an engineer. It's a matter that will have to be looked at, and I'm happy that the National Minister of Public Administration currently with the process of one public service, we may be able to distribute some of these skills. These are old skills, they're not new. 30, 40 years back skills that have moved to the Western Cape. Your town clerks, your town managers, your what, have moved to the Western Cape, they are making a contribution here. So it's not attributed to, it's more about the kind of skills that they have moved from the rest of the country to the bottom here. It's political, obvious. But nonetheless, the point that I want to bring is that issues of resolutions of the House, I want you to understand me, Chair, because earlier when I raised this issue, Simple says that the committee must have a tracking mechanism and all of that. Yes, it's correct. But once a resolution is passed by the House, it becomes a House resolution. The House has a responsibility to make sure that there's a follow-up and there's implementation of that resolution. So I thought I should just make this point across so that it's not just a point I was making. We are working on these issues on a daily basis. So it's a critical area that needs serious intervention.
Thank you. You can reply. I think that will be the last.
Thank you, Chair. The Western Cape and what the results as we have analyzed them and are attributed to, I think the honourable member that just spoke now is correct in suggesting that there's a whole range of factors that contribute to a number of these outcomes. However, for us, when we pointed out to the key drivers of internal control, and we insisted that leadership is the one who's going to set the tone in owning and driving the internal controls that we are proposing. When they responded positively and started doing that which we said they must do, we started seeing this picture. So it's largely for us, and I'm not disputing that there may be other reasons, but for us, we've said, here's the basic regular disciplines in terms of monitoring activity, reporting, reconciling, and making sure you ask the questions and you call for a report that will give you the information when you need it. That's what, from us, in terms of our analysis, has contributed to this outcome. Public Works, going into troubled times. Again, here, one of the diagnoses that we have made on this particular one, and this had a history where it was outside of the disclaimer position, but was still qualified. At some point, it was unqualified, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And they developed a complacency, I must say, in that particular department where they preferred to try and talk themselves out of trouble rather than fixing the trouble that was emerging in their administration and financial management. That's the long and short of it. So they try and find explanations to explain things that do not make sense. But when you explain things that do not make sense, the problem doesn't go away. You just recycle the explanation until it catches up again, and then you realize that, in fact, I haven't done anything. All I've been doing was just to try and explain myself out of trouble. Now, the trouble with a double entry system is that there's two places the numbers can go to. The one number must go to a debit, another one must go to a credit account, and there's nothing in between. So the explanations are just a delaying tactic sometimes. And so when you delay doing the stuff that must be done when it comes to debits and credits, after a while the explanation becomes tired itself, and then it results in a qualification and a disclaimer. So that's effectively one of the reasons, I think, for this one. The legislature reversing back out of clean and bouncing back, and what can be the recommendation for sustaining this performance? Coming back to the last slide that I showed, where we highlighted the slide number 35. We think that nothing can beat a diligent focus on those disciplines, the daily and regular routines. If a bank at the end of a day can get tellers to go into the vault and go take cash, which they must dispense to the customers at the tellers every day, and those people are able to balance that cash when they put it back in the vaults and come back the following morning to take it and still balance it with the necessary records. We think that a person who does the same thing in a hospital should be able to achieve that kind of rigor. And that's that discipline, the proper record keeping, the daily and monthly controls, to make sure that the work that is done, when it's finished and somebody has to take it over some other day, they mustn't be trying to find out what was happening when they were not the ones in charge. And for me, a practical example to make it a little easier would be what typically happens in a bank. A teller in a bank, when they are short of whatever amount, normally that is not tolerated, because the net effect of a debit and a credit could be a big amount on this side, another corresponding opposite big amount on this side, the net effect of which is R1. And that's why the bank doesn't countenance the reason for differences of that nature, hence the insistence on daily, monthly, regular routines with strong monitoring by those that are not the initiators and the record keepers of the transactions. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we exhausted the questions. I will now call on the Honourable Barotto to give us the way forward and the closing remarks.
Thank you, Chairperson. I must say that I can see that the house is now becoming more empty and empty. This is not correct. I think this is an important meeting, workshop, and it needs all of us. And this can't be left like that. We are talking about being responsible in our areas of work here. And that's what we want to do to make sure that we assist the Auditor-General. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson of the session, Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable members, members of the provincial legislatures, and our Auditor-General, Mr. Mokwetu, and you, team. Allow me to begin by extending our profound appreciation of all of you attending this workshop about the national and provincial audit outcomes. I am sure that the contributions that you have made will not only strengthen us, but it also enrich us on the role of the of oversight, our oversight role as a legislative sector in our country. From all the questions that were asked now after the presentation, obviously some of them are leading us towards the way forward, and I want to thank all those who contributed and gave us the way forward that we actually need. I see Mr. Makama is not there. Those are some of the things that we should really look into. And there was also an issue about the Speakers Forum that was raised here, Honorable Chairperson, which I think that all the issues that have been discussed and all the contributions that the members here have been giving will be considered very seriously. So remember, the President, not long, only last week in his State of the Nation address, he said that our central task is to ensure that we make sure that the services out there to the people go correctly. And we have been talking about for instance, the internal auditors, that it's a point of emphasis. And that tells us also that we need accountable people, and not only accountable people, but we need people who are more experienced and who are qualified to do the job. You know, you can remember, those who have been attending this workshop, you can remember, I can vividly remember the words of Babu Mbembe, the previous Auditor-General. He used to say, there has been some slight improvement. And he would say it, but you could see that he is not happy in the audit. He would say there's a slight improvement in the audit. And now, I also noticed ukuthi Ubaba Makwethu also put it very nicely and saying, things have not regressed. It's said nicely, but it is not nice, because we have seen the slides, we have seen what is happening. One member said, we said 2014, it's a year of clean outcomes. Although we are going there, but we really feel that it is not, we are not yet there. And I think the Auditor-General, you have been very clear in your recommendations as you were presenting to us about what should happen. And we want to reassure you, Auditor-General, that we really want to make it our firm resolve to assist and support you and your team to make sure that next time you come here, you will be saying to us, the tide is turning. And no longer, we have not regressed, you see. So that is our main aim that we are here for. And among other things, as we go forward, there is a common thing that is coming out, and that is a moist problem, is the supply chain. And you have also advised that we have internal auditors, and that I think will assist us very much, because obviously, if we are not sticking to the standards as the Public Finance Management Act prescribes to us in terms of the supply chain, we will not go anywhere. The procurement processes, we are not going anywhere. We sit in committees. Now we have been dealing with annual reports. And in dealing with the annual reports, most of the things that we hear, the Auditor-General hinting out, is the very same thing of supply chain. So something is very wrong, and we are not pointing fingers here and saying that, no, those people that are hired that are procuring that in the supply chain are not doing their work correctly. What is important is, for instance, what was raised by Ubabu Uchauke to say, we need to look into these things
and come up with a way of saying, how do we follow up and make sure that there is performance on these areas? Identify them and say, where is that? The internal controls, you know, the PFMA, among others, as a public entity, an official public entity, it says that we must ensure that the system of financial management and internal control established for the public entity is carried out within the area of responsibility of that particular official. So if this is happening through every year and every year, what do? Do we point fingers and not become corrective but become punitive? We're not going anywhere. But what is important is that the Public Finance Management Act and all the other acts, like at municipal levels, everything must have a consequence. And what we are saying is that we really need to see the consequences. And this is our job now, as this oversight structure of Parliament, to make sure that there are consequences for those who falter. There are consequences for those who do things against what the PFMA, which the Honorable Chairperson said, this is the law, said. I think everywhere outside where you go, you will hear people saying, you have said this one and this one have done this, there's corruption, but nothing is happening. It is our duty. It's not ours to point fingers, but it is for us to take this document and make sure that those departments that are responsible make sure that there are consequences for what is happening. Honorable Chairperson, I must say that we are saying the prevention controls are becoming stronger. And then let's try and hold up to that and make sure that as this oversight structure, we don't question, but we do what the law tells us to do and the guides that we get. Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you everybody for attending. Thanks.
Thank you to Honourable Baratu for those closing remarks. Honourable members, Mr. Makwetu, thank you for you and your team for doing this presentation to us, for the members for their inputs and questions, for the provinces also being present by way of chairpersons or the officials in the different departments, and thank you for the staff for assisting in arranging this meeting. Honourable members, that brings us to the end of business of this meeting. The House is adjourned. Thank you.